Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform, please. Reach out to me directly, email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for details. Today, we're discussing the Bremont Supermarine Chronograph, a chronograph GMT from Bremont's dive watch line, or perhaps I should say highly water-resistant line. It is 43 millimeters in diameter in steel, 15.8 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip, 50 millimeters across the wrist with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Bremont watches are built in the Greater London area, making them a rare mainstream option in luxury watchmaking from a British manufacturer. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, the fit is good. In spite of a strap that has a little bit of a fight, a flare, and a stiffness to it, it wears easily, and I could recommend it for a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference. This is what I mean when I say the strap has a little bit of a fight and a flare to it. It won't pull straight down out of the lug, so it has this outward arcing when it's pulled tight that creates a little bit of additional size. It's as though the lugs were broader across the wrist. That said, the strap is wonderfully supple. For as thick as it is, it's a very pliant and soft rubber. It's matte blue. You can see there are striations molded in to give it some superior definition versus simply a matte, untextured piece of rubber. It's a brand new Bremont factory strap. You can see the Bremont Buckle here, a combination of polishing and satination. And it's got a smart feature that some brands use on their accessory buckles. And it is this system where the bridge is actually elevated over the prongs on each side. So the strap, rather than stacking up and creating a pile under the wrist, it actually fits into the buckle, so the whole thing goes on your wrist a little bit flatter. Taking a quick look at the case, what they call their triptych case construction, meaning 3 parts. The real highlight for me is the tonal contrast between the DLC mid-case and then the silver of the underpinning of the bezel and the lug profile. You can see that the lugs run across unbroken, and the lugs are broken out separately from the canister that holds the dial and the movement. So ergonomically, it's got a little bit of a leg up on conventional 43 millimeter watches. It wears quite nicely. The timepiece also includes steel that is hardened on its face, so it's a little bit more scratch tolerant than conventional 316 steel. They do use a hardening process in the construction of Bremont cases that makes them more scratch tolerant than standard 316. While the outer microns might be thousands of Vickers, the combination of the core 316 steel with the hardened outer face is probably between 350 and 400 Vickers in practical terms. The case is satinated in most regards, with the exception of a polished bevel at the tips of the lugs, polished crown, and chronograph pushers, and these are screw-down chronograph pushers. This is a screw-down crown with the Bremont split propeller logo. The watch is 200 meters water resistant, but strictly speaking, it's not a diver because it doesn't have a unidirectional dive bezel. It has a bidirectional ceramic capped 24-hour GMT bezel, as this watch uses a Valjoux 7754 movement, which is the GMT version of the 7750. So you get a quick set for the date. You get the ability to rapidly adjust that independent 24-hour format second time zone. And then, of course, you pull the crown out all the way. You have hacking or stop seconds. We have rose gold gilded hands as well as applique indices. And as you can see, there's a nice Reho outboard that acts as a sort of transition from the bezel down to the dial base. It's this concave outer race that features calibrations for minutes as well as chronograph seconds. The watch does have a tone-on-tone design with silvered registers that are slightly countersunk into the dial. And yes, the watch is built in the Greater London area, so that's noted on the dial. We'll do a quick loom shot here. And you can appreciate that the watch is quite well loomed, to the point that the entirety of the GMT bezel is luminescent and it can be used in the dark. In conjunction with the independent second time zone, the bezel allows you to momentarily calculate a third time zone by setting your 24-hour hand to Greenwich Mean Time and then using the GMT offset plus or minus of your port or airport of destination, and that's how you find that third time zone. Now, over on the other side, They have their own name for it, but this is a Valjoux 7754. You could see because it says 7754 on the base plate. And even though Bremont describes these as modified by La Joux, they feature the ETA logo on the base plate, and a 7754 is the GMT version of an ETA 7750. Between the 7754 logo and the actual ETA brand stamp on the base plate, I'm not exactly sure what La Joux did to this movement, though I suspect they probably performed some degree of regulation as well as finishing with elements like the rotor and perhaps the polished cam, chronograph stop-start lever, and some of the return springs. Maybe that is what La Joux did here, just decorating the movement in a fashion that is customized for Bremont, including engine turning on some of the lower bridges, Côte de Genève on the winding bridge, and then you can see some of the springs, such as the reset spring for the reset hammer, and the cam spring under that. Those have been black polished on their top. So the decoration is impressive, but technically speaking, what are we getting? Well, they say it meets the ISO 3159 standards of a chronometer, and in fact, if we pull the crown out and take a look at the balance, we could see that this is one of the top 2 grades of balance. Straight spokes that are like a stick are the bottom 2 grades. These flared and splayed spokes, those are higher grade, top bore chronometer. It uses Edicron for beat error adjustment and fine regulation. It's a 25 joule unidirectional winding automatic movement with a 42-hour power reserve, and as you can see, it is a cam operated chronograph with the cam sitting adjacent to the crown. It actually is a very well adjusted and precisely manufactured cam chrono, so the feel is pretty much as good as you'd get on a column wheel. I don't feel like I'm really losing anything here. One of the best features of the 7750 base, and this is a 7754 so it qualifies, is that it uses an oscillating pinion rather than a conventional lateral clutch. So if you start the chrono, press and hold the start button, there's actually very little extraneous movement to the chronograph seconds hand. It will start just as smooth as a vertical clutch. And while an oscillating pinion is technically a form of lateral clutch, it often is lost in the noise as people try to distinguish between lateral and vertical clutches. This is a system that's generally used only on haute horlogerie chronograph movements. It just happens to be germane to the 7750, and a lot of folks never mention that when describing the 7750 family. And of course, it has a 4 Hz or 8 beat per second beat rate. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.